It is up, everyone. This is Captain Neon speaking, and for today's share, I'll be doing so on the idea of foresighted, based on verse 28 of today's treatment. I talked about earlier in previous shares how the gates or the windows of heaven have been opened to me, and I believe to all who receive the baptism of His Spirit in His only saving name. But being honest with you, as I try to do all the time, I'm still really having difficult with the experience. This is troublesome for me because it is affecting my faith. I find it difficult I find myself going back and forth between belief and unbelief. And that for me is worrisome, because God says He's coming back for the believer. You know, the faith, as he told, I believe, a few people that He healed. It's your faith that made you whole. It's your faith that saved you. And I understand that to be that when I believe in the righteous thing, I will act and live accordingly to a righteous life. Rather than not believing, then I'll just figure it doesn't matter and do whatever. But with this, and you know, I know this is not like something mystical. You know, God, He shows me, He's given me plenty of examples, and then I'll be like, yeah, okay. And then my faith wavers later on, doubting on, was it really what I thought it was, or have come to know it to be. And yesterday actually was the most recent example that I can think of. And it actually, you know, goes around playing on, you know, the wordplay, where, well, I'll save that after I get into the main part of the share. But again, ultimately, with all this going on and having heaven open and this new sight and, you know, these new senses, because with a new life comes new senses, I am asking the Lord, how do I cope? How do I operate correctly? First, He begins dealing with me by revealing the parallel between the 3 Hebrew boys in the furnace and His 3 chosen apostles to come with Him on the mount. In both cases, there were 3, Him making the 4th. And I believe, well, certainly, because God says on the mountain of configuration, He was basked in His glory. So I can only assume, going back to the Hebrew boys, that it was also his glory revealed why they were able to identify the fourth as being like the Son of Man. That's just my thought. I believe that God has answered that question for me, because I always question that, if Jesus hadn't come yet, how could they recognize him being the fourth? Maybe because there's an extra person in there, but I believe it has to do with being in the glory. So that's the first thing, where the title, play on words for the title, comes in. The fourth being cited, in the midst of the glory. Then he gives me examples of the other play on the same word for, in the sense of before sight or before sighted, where Moses and Elijah are actually telling him what's coming. And I was like, that really helped. As well as the example of James and John. Now, I'm not sure, I'm not a Bible scholar, so I haven't really looked into the chronological order and things of that nature, but there's a passage prior where it's describing the apostles that Jesus chose. And when it mentions James and John, it also mentions that God had nicknamed them or called them the sons of thunder. Boanerges, I believe it's in the King James. And I thought that was for a couple different reasons prior. But I believe today he shows me that it was really before sighted. If, just, based on how I'm going to receive it, when he first meets him, he lets him know, hey, he didn't have to say somewhere down the line, but he made it known that this was going to occur. And of course, they asked him if they should call down lightning. Yesterday, as I mentioned, I was filming an episode, recording the visuals for one of the upcoming daily doses. And as I'm sitting there, I had this thought. I don't know if I would say it was like a vivid image, but there was a specific thought that came into my mind. And I have to say, it probably wasn't even 5 minutes after that I saw this very same thing. I guess, I just put it out there because, you can see it for yourself in the daily dose. I was sitting there and just listening to God, listening to that day's dose of God's word. And the thought came in just about this idea of what I wanted to do back home in Jamaica and things like that, and all these things. And then I just thought about, having a boat. And prior to this, I realized that I guess wherever your boat is registered, you fly the flag. I'm assuming, but it was because a boat passed me prior to even having this thought, but I saw the American flag flying on it. So I figured, okay, you represent, the home base for that boat. So my thought was, I should get a boat. And if I get a boat, I would register it in Jamaica, so it'd have a Jamaican flag. I cannot, as God is my witness. And the thought just came. I actually, in myself, asked the Lord to please forgive me. just thinking about money and things like that, especially when God, he says, it's hard for the rich man to get in. That's something that I'm asking him to help me with, to stop, thinking about these big and grandiose things, because I don't want to make it harder for me to get into the kingdom of heaven. But I have this thought, and I promise you, as I said, it couldn't have been 5 minutes after I had this thought, this before thought, this before sight, that I look up, and if you see in the video, it's like this huge, like, white yacht, huge, and it passes by, and of course it catches my attention. I'm looking at it, and the flag on the back, I can't make it up, is a Jamaican flag. And but again, I was like, God, what is, it blew me away. And of course, my first thought, and the first thing I want to do is dismiss it as a coincidence, as, whatever. Oh no, you tripping. But how can that be? And I believe God gave that to me, this most recent example, because of course, like he always does, he's laying the groundwork and the foundation for me, because in his foresight, before today, which was yesterday, he knew that I would be sitting here, and this would be what he was imparting to me, in an effort again to help me cope, because I truly cannot afford not to spend eternity with the Lord, for so many reasons, on so many levels. And so my faith must be Christ the rock solid, and my belief must be unmovable, unshakable, the mountain moving kind. Because all in all, I believe God is helping me to, of course, understand him by the only way possible, which is himself through his son, the before runner who finished victorious. Caption this. Wasn't it just you going through it? Because I see another in there with you.